Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with another part of What If Naruto Was in a Political Marriage. This is the part 15 of this series. Before continuing this, I would like to thank you guys for reaching 900 plus subscribers, or 908 subscribers as the time of recording of this video. I hope we can reach 1000 at the end of this week. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And without further ado, let's continue our story. Chapter 18, The Pranks. Naruto was not having a very fun first day in Eva, because in the first 5 minutes that he had arrived there, he had been pushed into a water slide full of oil and grease, stuck into a quick drying cement and covered in feathers, all orchestrated by Kuretsuchi, of course. Every man, woman and child who was in the general vicinity of the Kage administration where it took place laughed at the sight of stuck, oiled and feathered Naruto, who was desperately trying not to vomit. His teleport ride there had left him queasy as it was, but being shoved out the window and onto a slide by his rock wife almost nailed the head into the coffin. Naruto could feel the food in his stomach desperately wanting to exit out of his facial orifices. But he pushed the urge down out of sheer willpower. He would not give Kuretsuchi the satisfaction of seeing him blow chunks on his first day in the village hidden in the stones. As he stood at stock attention in front of a laughing populace, the Tsuchikage floated down from the open window and formally greeted the son of the accursed Namikaze. "Hello, Naruto," he said, barely able to contain his laughter. "Welcome to our hospitable homeland, Iwagakure no Sato." He spat out some of the oil that had gotten into his mouth. "Oh, please, the pleasure is all mine," he replied sarcastically. Naruto began to glare daggers at his granddaughter, who was on the ground laughing her sides out. "You do know that I'm going to get her back, right?" he asked the aging man. Onuki put his arms and closed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked airily. "Is there anything that my granddaughter would have done to upset you so much that you would resort to such childish antics of pranking?" He smirked and discreetly winked at the humiliated Leaf Cannon. "But even if you would resort to such childish antics, as long as you don't involve anyone else, I doubt that you would face much retribution." Naruto grinned when he heard that. Time to start plotting. Takigagure no Sato, Link Break, Fu was staring at the unopened book on the ground in front of her. The label read Icha Icha Paradise. Ever since her interaction with Naruto, or more specifically when she had taken in mass amount of dick pheromones, she had been feeling different. Their time together ever since she had lost it and crushed some of his ribs and been spent going over the finer points of taijutsu, training in swordsmanship and mass amount of ramen eating. That time she spent with him had been fantastic for her, but she always had a little something niggling in the back of her head, something that wanted to be indulged, but she couldn't indulge it. Not while Naruto was there. All of that led to her current situation of staring at a book full of pornographic material. She didn't know how to start sexually indulging her lust, as that was the feeling that she believed that she was under the spell of. Even if some of the many books that she read had steamy sessions in them, she had up until then no interest in reading pages after pages of only that and nothing else. Reading had also given her a fair understanding of how people acted and felt around and towards each other. So even if she hadn't spent her life up to that point surrounded by people, she had a basic understanding of how people acted around other peoples, with emotions like love, lust, happiness, sadness and so on mixed up in the pot. And even if the books she read had been able to accurately describe what sexual feeling, attraction and release had felt like, they never went into the finer details of masturbating, or more specifically how to do it. Fu sighed, opened up the book and started reading it. Everything that came after that would happen upon instinct, she supposed. Link break. Iwagakure no Sato. Naruto was showering off all the grease and feathers that he had accumulated during his first 5 minutes in Iwagakure. When he had arrived at Kuretsuchi's domicile, he had noted that her father was away and immediately went to the bedroom to get clean. All the while, Kuretsuchi was being racked by laughing fits. She had been last seen on her couch, holding her stomach and moaning in pain and pleasure. Apparently, she laughed so hard that her core was feeling like it was on fire. Despite the fact that he had been publicly humiliated by his wife, he was smiling. Despite the fact that he traded a serene forest with a metropolis made of rocks, he was happy. Despite the fact that he was in a shower that was covered in grease and feathers, which he would probably have to clean later, he was in a good mood. Why? It's because he had finally found a rival in pranking, and he was going to have a lot of fun getting even with her over the course of his week there. Link break. A few hours later, late evening, Kitsuchi walked into his kitchen after just having completed a mission and noted an extremely intoxicating aroma. It smelled of pork and vegetable in his house, a pleasant duo. Although he and Kuretsuchi never cooked, he never expected to find his son-in-law slaving over a giant pot in the process of creating culinary art. All reservation that Kitsuchi had over the marriage of his daughter and the son of the fourth instantly vanished at the sight of the pork stew. How did Naruto know that pork stew was his favorite food in the world? Kuretsuchi walked in from her room and greeted her father. "Hey Pops," she said offhandedly. Looking between his daughter and son-in-law, he said, "If you two weren't already married, I'll tell you to marry him." Kuretsuchi backed up in surprise. "What's this about?" she asked. He walked up behind Naruto and clasped both of his large hands on Naruto's shoulder, making him stop cooking the stew for a few seconds. "Because we finally found someone who knows how to cook in the house," he said. Kuretsuchi noticed that the meal that Naruto was creating as well, which set her off guard because of shit she put him through when he first arrived there. The food smelled fantastic and she couldn't wait to eat it. But she also couldn't help but feel something in the back of her head trying to tell her something, brushing it off. She walked back to the table to wait to be served up, looking with her dad. Imagine my surprise that when I get home after a long mission that I am having my favorite meal cooked for me by my son-in-law," Kitsuchi remarked. Kuretsuchi nodded as well. The situation was new one for her because even though her and her father weren't estranged by any means, she could only remember one time when they both decided to cook a meal and eat together. Long story short, they ended up pushing the scrounged remains into the trash can and ordered a pizza. Naruto brought the huge pot of stewed goodness and started serving them up some food, which they all began chowing down on with great gusto. Kuretsuchi felt bad for pranking him to the extent that she did after she began eating the great meal that he had prepared for them, in spite of humiliation that she put him through. Kuretsuchi would have to apologize later, but out of the hearing range of her father and without anybody knowing about it, all throughout their sit-down meal, he was silent, scheming about what he was going to do to her while she was asleep for the night. Just like he had done before when he had dyed her clothes pink. He broke out into an uncontrollable grin. Kitsuchi noticed that Naruto's face morphed into one of supreme happiness. "What?" he asked. Being found out, Naruto began stumbling forwards. "Oh, what? I just can't wait to spend my time with my wife, is all," he said, continuing the grin maniacally. With a mischievous smile, Kitsuchi nudged Kuretsuchi. "Looks like I can count on grandchildren after all." Kuretsuchi blushed heavily and started to spew out reasons why the statement that he just announced was false in the most egregious of ways. After properly making a fool out of herself, she She sank back down into her chair. Kurtsuchi was genuinely confused after she had left Konoha. The both of them were still on terms that one might call unfriendly. Now, though he not only seemingly put the prank she pulled behind him, but he also created a homemade meal for her and talked about how he wanted to spend time with her. While she was busy thinking to herself whether or not he might be harboring feelings for her, Naruto collected the empty bowls and put them into the sink. Kitsuchi rose and said goodnight to the both of them. After Naruto cleaned out the bowls, he approached Kurtsuchi. "So what are the sleeping arrangements?" he asked. She snapped out of her reverie. Follow me." Kurtsuchi rose up from her seat and bade Naruto to follow her. They ended up in the traditional Eastern-style room, with a closet that held tatami mats and futons. She also had a bathroom extension to her room. Kurtsuchi grabbed 2 tatami mats with matching futons and set them down in the middle of the room. "We only have 2 bedrooms, so you're bunking with me," she said. "And don't try any funny business. These walls are thin, and my dad sleeps right next to door." Naruto wasn't planning to, so he didn't feel much fear in the slightest. "Don't worry, you can trust me," he said, all too sweaty and sweetly. Kurtsuchi eyed him warily. "Okay." She picked a few of her pajamas out and went into the bathroom. "I'm changed in here. You change out there," she ordered. Naruto began taking out clothes from his ceiling scroll. "Okay, boss," he said with a mocking salute. Closing the door behind her, she began to get out of her clothes and put her pajamas on, and at an unknowingly fast pace. Her thoughts of Naruto possibly having feelings for her made her nervous and caused her to think up a whole slew of questions, like whether or not it was a good idea for him to sleep in the same room as her, or what their romance would even end up like, or if she would mind being romantically involved with her husband at all at this point. She was an overthinker for sure. However, she never thought about Naruto's state of dress when she opened the door to her bathroom, which probably should have noticed by her, because he was naked from the waist down. "Whoa!" Naruto quickly covered his extremity, and Kurtsuchi closed the door almost as soon as she opened it. After being reminded of the size of his member, an entirely new set of questions permeated her mind and made her blush a brilliant vermilion. When she was sure that an appropriate amount of time passed, she opened the door again to find Naruto getting into his bedding. He refused to meet her gaze. Naruto did not comment on what she may or may not have seen, and Kurtsuchi was far too embarrassed to even bring it up. She found her newfound embarrassment infuriating. She was the one who made people embarrassed, not him. With the lights were off and they were both settled for sleep, Kurtsuchi asked, "Hey kid." He grunted in affirmation that he was listening. After she asked the first question, she found it hard to bring up her apology. "Look, I might have gone a bit overboard with the prank this morning. I'm sorry." Naruto looked at her in surprise, but Kurtsuchi's back was turned to him. He never expected her to apologize for pranking him, and he even started having reservations over what he was planning to do to her. But still, even if she apologized, they were uneven, and she was going to stuff retribution for her insolence at even thinking that she could prank the king of pranks. Even so, Naruto decided to tone down what he was planning on just a bit. Unknown to her, he was grinning like a madman. Link break. The next morning, Kurtsuchi felt foolish. No, scratch that. She felt like she had been mentally impaired. Her reflection stared back at her from the bathroom mirror. How did she even think that he might be interested in starting a romantic relationship? How did she let herself ponder that possibility? It was true, during the first few weeks that they had been apart, Naruto was one of the few people that she even remotely liked talking to, mostly because she didn't have to think about what she could or could not say to him. She was the only grandchild of the Kage after all. Kurtsuchi had even liked their cycle of pranks. It was fun pranking him, and to least extent, it was fun being pranked. She had also been really worried about her future. What if the treaty lasted forever? She wouldn't be able to start a relationship with anyone other than him. As strange as it sounded to her, he was the only outlet for her to ever think of feeling romance towards. But no, Kuretsuchi didn't think that she would ever be able to forgive him and bury the hatchet for what he did when she was asleep. The reflection that stared back at her had neon pink hair. It wasn't even painted on pink. He bleached her hair in her sleep and dyed it so it looked like her natural hair that colored ferociously. She numbly walked back into her room, already knowing that he had vacated it. From the kitchen she could hear the sizzling sound of bacon, so she walked silently in that direction. Indeed, there was bacon being made as well as eggs and toast. He didn't notice her presence, but was still smiling to himself nonetheless as he cooked up their breakfast. Kuretsuchi wanted to murder him. She wanted to impart an amount of murder on his face to the extent that the murder that his face endured would be spoken of for the generations to come. Her body wouldn't move to her commands, however, she was still in shock. How? So she settled on asking him how he did it. Naruto turned around, noticing her presence. Oh, good morning, Pinksuchi. Have you done something with your hair? He asked cheekily and returned to making breakfast. How? She repeated. What? Oh, you're a really heavy sleeper, you know. Here he said in a response. There were bags under his eyes, signifying that he hadn't slept the previous night. But the chemicals. He turned to face her yet again. Every good prankster has a ready supply of heavy-duty hair bleach and permanent dye. Kuretsuchi eyed her sword that she left on the living room table. She was about to pick it up and reduce him to cutlets when her dad came back into the kitchen. Something smells good. He was stopped mid-sentence when he noticed the bags under Naruto's eyes in conjunction with Kuretsuchi's newfound hair color. Kitsuchi knew of Kuretsuchi's hatred for color pink and thus was able to piece together somewhat what happened between the two. Not knowing what to say or how to react, he just decided to get some toast and leave to report the mission assignment. He trusted his daughter enough to know him. As he was beginning to leave, Kuretsuchi's hand began to twitch towards her sword once more. She knew that she couldn't kill him, but having her sword by her side felt good for her and let her think level-headedly. So, what's on the agenda for today? Naruto asked while heaping eggs and bacon on 2 plates for him and Kuretsuchi. She sat down at the kitchen table, still holding on to the blade, which was unsheathed. We're supposed to report to a training ground to be taught by a Jonin, she replied airily. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You're going to? Yes, she hissed out. Someone is in a grumpy mood today, Naruto said with some bacon in his fork. Kuretsuchi quickly brought her blade in front of her and thrusted it at him. Naruto, even if he did push her a bit too far, never expected her to try to skewer him, and thus flinched away from her strike. She retracted her sword that had missed him by a mile and began to eat the bacon that was now situated on its tip. Naruto looked at his now bacon-less fork in wonder. Kuretsuchi managed to wrench the bacon from his fork without slicing in two. A remarkable feat. You know what? I'm going to get you. It won't be today, might not be tomorrow, but it will happen soon. Be ready, she said with a mouthful of bacon. Naruto grinned back at her. I look forward to it. Truthfully, he enjoyed their little cycle of pranks as well. Kuretsuchi was a good opponent. She walked up from her position at the table and proceeded to put ninja wrappings around her head, intent to hide her new hair color. After that, she walked out the door. Naruto got up and ran after her. Where are you going? He said to her loudly. She turned around with a quizzical look on her face. We're out of milk. I'm getting some. Then coming back. She yelled back at him, and Ninja jumped away. Naruto slunk back into the house and got ready for training. Kuretsuchi quickly returned with a jug of milk in hand. The perk of being a ninja is that one could get groceries in under 3 minutes. She suited up without a word edgewise and met up with Naruto at the front door. The run to the training ground was dangerously quiet. It put Naruto off his game slightly and made him wonder if he went too far with dyeing her hair pink permanently. They ended up ways away from the sprawling Eva proper and ended up at the very outskirts. It was just a flat plain of a single slab of rock for as far as he could see. "Where are we?" he asked Kurotsuchi. "Training ground 111, dubbed the flat rock field," she said with no small amount of national pride. Naruto looked around. "Okay, so where's our sensei?" Just as the words left his mouth, the ground in front of him turned wavy and a very large man erupted from the now water-like substance. He was still dripping from the watery, granular material. Kurotsuchi looked at him, Naruto, and said, "This is Aisha-sensei, the rock swimmer." Although he was a towering man, he had the body structure of an Olympic swimmer and thusly had no hair on his head and chest, which were bare of clothing. The only clothing he wore was a pair of spandex swimming trunks. Despite his lack of physical age markers, his countenance marked him as a 20-something-year-old. He nodded in Naruto's direction. "Good morning, son of the fourth Hokage. I am Asiha, or Aisha, and I will be teaching you." I don't know what the name of this guy is. Eisha. Is Asiha or Aisha? I don't know what that means, but oh well, let's continue our story. Naruto nodded back at him. "Hello, Aisha-sensei. You can call me Naruto." "Okay, Naruto. Tell me all that you know in ninja survival." He rattled off all that he knew. The Shadow Clones, Rasengan, basic Genjutsu, survival techniques, transformation, substitution, and Sexy no Jutsu. Aisha decided not to comment on the Sexy no Jutsu. "You seem to have extremely basic knowledge in ninja skills as well as extremely advanced knowledge. There's no in between. You'll practice swordsmanship and beef up your supplementary jutsu repertoire." Naruto didn't see any sword on his form. "You'll teach me Genjutsu?" he asked. Aisha shook his head. "Nope. Luckily enough, your wife has a great knowledge on the arts of swords." Kurotsuchi menacingly unsheathed her sword. Naruto also unsheathed his sword from his hip. He didn't like the look that she was giving him. Link break. Kumogakure at the moment. Yuito finally woke up and did her morning stretches. She had been told before that she was unnaturally limber, even for a Konoichi. It was proven when she effortlessly poked her head in between her legs and crouched down to rest. The very notion of bending a torso so far back that it almost came back to its original position would be damn near impossible to pull for the normal shinobi. Yuito, however, had been able to do after just only a 1 week of stretches. She didn't know the reason why. Perhaps it was Matatabe's fault, or maybe she was just born limber. There was a knocking on the door. She sighed and unfolded her body from its resting position. Outside the door was a very nervous Samui, though she didn't show any of it on her face. Yuito was surprised by the person on her front step. "Hello, Samui-san. Is there something that you want?" she said cordially. Samui shuffled around for a bit. "Can I come inside? I need to talk to you." Sure." Yuito opened the door, fully allowing her to step inside. Samui gazed around her interior and settled herself on the couch. "I like your apartment," Samui started coolly. "What was it that you wanted?" Yuito said, not really in the mood for the idle chit-chat. Samui sighed. "It's about Naruto." Yuito sat down as well. "Figured as much." Samui took a moment to collect her thoughts. "I know that you're married to him, along with other 4. And I also know that you 4 aren't romantically involved with him. So I was wondering if it would be okay for me to date him." "Probably not. It would send a bad message to the rest of the nations that Naruto started a relationship with a person outside the marriage." "But surely that they know that the arranged marriage is an unwanted affair by the ones who were directly involved." "Maybe," Yuito considered. but you have to understand that this union is more symbolic than anything else. Samui was quiet for a time. Okay, next question. Do you think that I'd be allowed to be a part of the marriage as well? Yuto was shocked at this and was unable to come up with any other response than why. Using her brother's word, she decided, so I can use it for a vehicle to start a relationship with him. Yuto leveled a maternal gaze on Samui, understanding her slightly. Look, Samui, I don't know you that well, but you're 13. You shouldn't get hung up on a guy at that age. You got your whole life ahead of you, and you shouldn't bog yourself down with a marriage when you're so young. Samui was starting to lose her composure. But I never met someone like him before. Yuto nodded. Yeah, he's a special guy. But if you want to start a relationship with him, well, you may only be married on paper, but you'll have to go through the steps of being actually married, namely living in the same house, sharing a bed, putting up with each other's bad points for day one. I don't think that any budding relationship could survive that. Samui looked like she had been expecting that information. Thanks, Yuto. You know, you're surprisingly a cool person. I'll try to take that as a compliment. Yuto got up and Samui did the same. Samui left her house and with a parting word of, if you ever need to talk, don't hesitate to come to me. Samui needed older females' advice. There weren't that many other older females that she could talk to for advice. Yuto closed the door and resumed her stretchings in the living room with a smile on her face. It was nice being needed by someone. Link break. Iwagakure 4 hours later. Kurotsuchi was on the ground, too tired to even think about moving any limbs. Where does that energy come from? She thought to herself. She glared at Naruto menacingly. It was lucky that her head just so happened to be turned to the side that Naruto was standing in, because she didn't have the energy to move her neck. Naruto was sweating profusely, but other than that and a few already healing cuts, he was fine. He and Isha were having a conversation that was just out of the range of her hearing. Naruto walked up to the position and said abruptly, "You okay, Pink-Suchi?" She tried to move to wave him off, but only succeeded in doing slightly movements of her arm on the ground. Although she hadn't needed any chakra to boost her speed or strength at the later stages of their sparring, she had needed to push chakra into the limbs just so she didn't get tired. He knelt down to her and pulled her torso up so that it was resting on his knees. He pulled out a soldier pill and put it in her mouth. Chew, he ordered. Pink-Suchi was able to comply. As soon as she ate the pill, she felt energy rushing back into her limbs and was able to prop herself back up. Their fight had been fierce. Kurotsuchi had at first rushed him with wild abandon and ferocity known only to women who have been scorned, not knowing or caring how well he could fight with the sword. After a few minutes of that, even though he was an inferior swordsman, he was able to get some nicks in her. So she decided to be more cautious and play it by the book. After engaging him for 4 hours, she was astounded by his endurance, and even if he was inferior in skills, he definitely won by attrition. She pulled herself up from the ground and waved Naruto away from her. Isha walked up to them and announced, "That was a boring 4 hours for me." Kurotsuchi didn't really care much and walked to rest a bit. Even after she ate the soldier pill to replenish her chakra, her muscles were still tired from the fight. Isha looked back at Naruto. "Dude, what did you do to her?" "Hey, she started it," he said. He put up his hands. Hey, don't worry. I'll leave the martial conflicts to the married." He took out a scroll and passed it to Naruto. "The reason they call me the rock swimmer is because I took the jutsu earthwalking and perfected it to the scale that I'm able to enter and exit solid rocks. You'll be practicing the jutsu on soft earth for now." He did a few hand seals and slammed his palm on the ground. A 6 foot wider in diameter circle of solid rock turned to soft earth. Naruto unfurled the scroll. It detailed all the things that one would have to know about the jutsu in order to properly accomplish it, from the hand seals to how the chakra was internally molded, to how it was extremely discharged, all the way to the finer points of execution. So if I learn from the scroll, what are you going to do? He asked the rock swimmer. Hey, I put you in the right direction. You have to walk it. Aisha promptly melted into the solid rock and disappeared. You remind me so much of a certain perverted scarecrow back at home, Naruto mumbled to himself. He looked at the scroll again. Naruto wasn't much of a book learner, preferring to do things with hands-on experience. But with his sensei gone, he didn't have much of a choice but to look at the scroll for guidance. He looked at Kurotsuchi for support but found that she had fallen asleep. As this is where I'm going to leave this part of, guys. I hope you like this one. And this is Apollo Uchiha and I'm signing out. Peace.